Hating America and resisting America. That is the focus of tonight's angle. It's time to simplify things. Now, the left-wing protests that we're seeing rage across the country, they may, at first glance, seem to be focused on different causes. Anti-Zionist, anti-ICE, pro-trans. But at their core, they have one common denominator. The forces organizing them, fat cat Democrat groups, assorted socialists, and open borders fanatics, are deeply anti-American. And the slope that they've created is a slippery one. Now, remember 5 years ago, BLM Marxists and street thugs legitimized the ripping down of historic statues and markers. And today, they've taken it a step further. They're burning the American flag, and it's almost become commonplace.
Burn it down! Burn it down! Burn it down! Down with U.S. imperialism!
Signal our hatred of the American imperialism. The government that is simultaneously deporting immigrants, smashing the protests, and genociding the people of Gaza. We're going to burn the American flag, all right?
Well, the Mexican flag is flown proudly to say, this is our land. You stole it, and we're taking it back. Of course, they're ignorant of their own history. They don't know it. Now, equally as commonplace is the waving of other foreign flags on U.S. soil. Again, the message is, America's just not special. Well, remember, we purchased California and half of Mexico in 1848 for $15 million after we won the Mexican-American War. So maybe some of these people waving the Mexican flag should consider getting off the protest circuit and opening a book once in a while. Now, in all these protests, we see that the idea of the melting pot in America that, was what legal immigration was all about, that is long gone. Now foreigners who come here feel entitled and expect us to melt into their cultures. Embracing America, abiding by our laws, honoring our customs, that is out the window. Instead of bringing America into your own experience, they're encouraged to resist America. So you got online propaganda, bought and paid for by rich Democrat donors, feeds this radicalism, and heck, many of our own schools teach them to resist the government here.
There has never been a more dangerous dealer of death than the American empire. Our aim is to dismantle that empire.
Hamas has punctured the illusion of invincibility. It was exhilarating, it was energizing.
Revolution is always violent, but revolution is always driven by radical love.
Look, and parents, I think they believe that sending their kids to some of our most vaunted institutions of higher learning will give their kids a leg up. Well, maybe. But you also might run into people like this specimen, Alejandra Caraballo, proud trans clinical instructor, whatever that is, at Harvard Law School, who, after the court's decision affirming the Tennessee ban on trans surgeries, posted, "I honestly don't care anymore if this country destroys itself and burns down to the ground. The current form of the United States is incompatible with democracy or human rights. It no longer has any legitimacy to govern, and I'll dance on its grave. Let something better rise from the ashes," this clinical instructor wrote. So rise from the ashes is where her or his or whatever their career should be after that now deleted post. Imagine your tuition dollars going to pay that salary. But look, we have sitting members of Congress who essentially believe the same thing. America hater Ilhan Omar sounds like she thinks her native Somalia is better than the country that gave her refugee protection.
To have a democracy, a beacon of hope for the world to now be turned into one of the worst countries where the military are in our streets without any regard for people's constitutional rights, while our president is spending millions of dollars propping himself up like a failed dictator with a military parade. It is really shocking.
It was shocking. Trump must be a really bad dictator, by the way, since several hundred protests took place across the country that Saturday. The violence that took place was instigated by the left, Congresswoman. Again, these protesters, they don't care about migrants, they don't care about Muslims, they don't even care about trans. They care about destabilizing America and making the country seem ungovernable as long as Trump is in the White House. In Portland, Oregon, which was a once sleepy town, attracted kind of a harmless granola, bunch and the outdoorsy mix. There we now have trained agitators who play dress up in all black, bike helmets, ski goggles. Most will probably pick last in gym class. That's what I've just discovered. They all belong in a psychiatric facility or in jail. And this is how things go down there.
Portland police declared a riot had broken out at the ICE facility at around 6:30 in the evening after a federal officer was hurt. Police ordered the protesters to leave using tear gas, but the night led to 3 arrests. One arrest for attempted assault on an officer. Another was arrested after police saw someone throw a rock at the building. Officers reported being pepper sprayed while making that arrest. Police arrested a third person who they say was picking up traffic control devices and putting them in his truck.
Now, this has been nonstop madness. That's kind of a tame look at what Portland's look like. But for a long time, it's been tolerated by the liberal elected officials who spend more time empathizing with the protesters, who are just thugs, than actually prosecuting them. And they pay lip service, by the way, thanking our police, but at every turn, they coddle and encourage criminals. So the chaotic scenes played on endless loops on X, they're depressing spectacles, and they're meant to demoralize young people. Again, they believe that America is rotten to the core, that anti-Western bile is the hub of the protest wheel. And the situation is similar overseas. If you follow my Instagram, you might have seen my posts about the pro-Palestine, anti-Israel protests at London's Parliament Square. Right when we landed on Saturday, that's what we saw. Now wait, when you watch this, wait for the crazy girl dancer at the end. That woman was kind of part deadhead, part West hater. Now, notice the Iranian flags that are now mixed into the crowd. If you look carefully, zero in on that. They even have their own mobile wardrobe, I discovered when I walked through this. If you really want to honor Hamas, you have to go all out. Great. They didn't like it when I zeroed in on that Socialist Workers' Party tent. They didn't like that at all. But the goal is always the same, to sow chaos and division. And remember, these agitators, they rarely create anything of value. They only know how to destroy. But we are onto their sick game. We know real hate when we see it, and we will never let them destroy America. And that's the angle.
Fox News alert, there's been an earthquake in Iran, 5.1 magnitude right outside the capital. But the war isn't slowing down. Iranian missiles hitting cities in Israel, one missile hitting an Israeli daycare center. The USS Nimitz carrier strike group arrives in the region this weekend, doubling the number of aircraft carriers there. Trump telling reporters that 2 weeks isn't a deadline. Anything could happen before then.
Does Iran have 2 weeks, or could you strike before that? Are you essentially giving them a 2-week timeline?
I'm giving them a period of time. We're going to see what that period of time is, but I'm giving them a period of time, and I would say 2 weeks would be the maximum.
This period of time gives Trump more military options as he moves more assets into place. It could also be a setup for a surprise attack, and it lets Israel soften up Iranian targets and suppress their capacity to retaliate if Trump does decide to join the offensive. Continued Israeli bombardment could pressure the Iranians to sign away their nuke program. Trump's hoping that's the case. Today, Iranian negotiators met with European diplomats in Switzerland. But there was no breakthrough. The regime continues to insist on enrichment. Trump says negotiations with the Europeans, waste of time.
Did the Europeans help at all in talking with the Iranians?
No, they didn't help. No. Iran doesn't want to speak to Europe. They want to speak to us. Europe is not going to be able to help in this one.
Iranian negotiators are saying they'll only meet with the United States if Israel stops its airstrikes. But Trump has already said, we're not interested in a ceasefire. We want a solution. And the Israeli airstrikes have been very effective.
Would you support Iran being able to have civilian nuclear energy capabilities up to 3.76%?
You know, they're sitting on the top of one of the largest piles of oil in the world. I just don't know why they need that for civilian work. You know, it's one thing for certain countries to say, hey, I want to have a certain amount where I can go nuclear a little bit because we need it for electricity, we need it for air conditioners, etc. But when you're sitting on one of the largest oil piles anywhere in the world, it's a little bit hard to see why you need that.
The march to war was picking up speed, and the 2-week window takes the pressure off and gives Trump control of the timeline, not Netanyahu. There's risks to action and there's risks to inaction. It's like life-saving emergency surgery. It's delicate and dangerous. Sources say the president's looking at what happened to Libya. Quote, the president in recent days has specifically mentioned the oil-rich North African country's decades-long plunge into anarchy in 2011, after the U.S. joined a NATO bombing campaign to oust dictator Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi saw America topple Saddam over WMDs, so he got rid of his program voluntarily, thinking it would save him from an invasion. But Obama, Hillary, and the Europeans exploited the vulnerability, launched airstrikes, and Gaddafi was brutally murdered by the Arab Street. Libya is now a failed state. It's run by militias and terrorists, and Europe had to absorb waves of refugees. Air campaigns aren't always successful. Look at North Vietnam. Look at Kosovo. They're attractive because they limit casualties, but Trump's ruled out boots on the ground.
Is an aerial campaign in Iran enough, or do you need ground forces?
Well, I'm not going to talk about ground forces. The last thing you want to do is ground forces.
Iran's mountains and deserts create a natural fortress, and any ground assault would be a death wish. If the Ayatollah's taking out in an airstrike or a coup, there's no natural opposition group to seize power. Those in charge will be men with guns, and they will try to bring back some sort of clerical leadership because, after all, this is an Islamic republic. If the supreme leader were toppled and foreign enemies sought to foment public unrest by bombarding the country, enforcing a no-fly zone and applying economic pressure, as they did against Saddam Hussein's Iraq in the 90s, the Guard would use brute force to maintain power. This is the reason Trump and his team have been working around the clock to reach a deal behind the scenes. 47 knows if you snuff out the Ayatollah without planning for the aftermath, he owns what happens next.
President, are you concerned that Iran or its proxies would wage terror attacks against American targets abroad if you order military action?
We're always concerned about that, and we have to take them out and be very strong. You're even in danger talking to me right now. Do you know that? You are in danger talking to me right now. So I should probably get out of here, but you guys are actually in danger. Can you believe it?
If the United States did take military action, the Iranians could have a clandestine nuclear operation. They could activate it without us knowing and spin up a nuke in the dark. Once the missiles start flying, things move fast. The exiled Shah's son is already meeting with congressmen and planning for a post-Ayatollah Iran. At least there's planning for what comes next. You couldn't say that for some of these other wars. This is why there's only one commander-in-chief. President Bill Clinton, he was given an opportunity to preemptively strike North Korea's nuclear program in the 90s. He chose not to. And today, North Korea can put a nuclear warhead on an intercontinental ballistic missile within the range of California. Bill Clinton also was given the opportunity to take out bin Laden in the 90s. He chose not to. And then just a few years later, 9/11. Iraq, Libya, North Korea, bin Laden. These are all fresh in 47's mind. As he likes to say, we'll see what happens.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.